It's a key moment in the life of St. Eugene because this man was a nobleman. And even though the French Revolution reputedly had thrown out the nobility, in fact, under Napoleon, it all came back. He comes back to Aix-en-Provence because he was noble, because he had also a background. He had an uncle who was a pretty well-known priest. He had a great uncle who'd been a canon as well in Aix and Marseille. He could have got a position of authority in Aix immediately. He could have been a vicar general. And in fact, the year before when he was ordained, the bishop who ordained him in Amiens wanted to keep him there as his vicar general because he was a friend of the family. So this is the first significant thing, that Eugene then could have had any honor that he wanted in the Aix church. He could have had the Plum Cathedral if he wanted to, or any other parish that he could have made noise with, because his mother was also an influential person within the church there in Aix. And the choice that he made was the choice to go and preach to the abandoned domestic servants and the workers of Aix, in a language which, it must also be said, was illegal to use, because the French Revolution wanted one language for the whole of France. So legally, they wanted everyone to speak French. Okay, they closed an eye to the fact that people were still using Provençal. They were being quite practical about it. But Eugene broke social conventions. He broke the law to an extent in order to get close to the people. So that, to me, is the first significant point, that he had the courage to climb over the fence, to get into socially unacceptable areas, as it were. Then the fact that he did it at 6 o'clock in the morning is before these people went to work. So again, another sign of the closeness to the people. What we have are the notes that he took for the Madeleine sermon as he prepared the sermon. Eugene couldn't work off a written text. So those are the notes that he used to give that message. So in his notes, he says, to begin by saying that many people in Aix are going to be receiving Lenten sermons in French, some of them very learned. Who is going to be talking to the poor who don't speak French? And there he thanks the pastors of the Madeleine that they have had this openness, this charity to open their church to allow him to come and preach to these people. So socially, again, you can imagine Madame de Mazenot and her friends going, ooh, you poor woman, she must have been so humiliated. The son's first public sermon, and here he goes and he gives it to the smelly domestics and the smelly workers. Okay, that's one point. The contents of the sermon. One part of that sermon is a very famous sermon written by a great French preacher and author, Bossuet. And he poses those questions, but he poses them to the rich, trying to get the rich to see the poor and the needs of the church in a different way. Eugene takes that idea and he totally changes it. He's not preaching to the rich, he's preaching to the poor, to the very ones who need not to have the charity of the rich coming along and saying, oh, well, what can we do for you? You know, we do a little bit of charity and off we go. But he's going to the heart of the thing, which is to transform the people themselves. What is the message that he gives them? It's the message that he himself had received at his own conversion. It was the message of being loved by God, finding in God the direction of your life, finding the light that you need from that direction of walking with God, and then allowing that light to transform you. What was Eugene? When he stood at the foot of the cross, he realized how poor he had been, even though materially he wasn't poor. He realized how blind he had been. He realized what a captive he had been to himself, to his own selfishness, to the social things around him, taking Luke chapter 4 as the text that he used to summarize that experience for him. So, as he had been transformed and realized his dignity in God, so did he want to minister to these people who were the dirty ones of the earth, the small people, the rejected ones. So that to me is perhaps the key part of the Sermon of the Madeleine, is Eugene giving his own experience, leading others to his own experience of realizing who God was, that God had given his life in Jesus Christ for them. And then where it has resounded so much is the message that he was giving, where he starts off and says, what does the world say that you are? And he's pretty harsh in the way that he puts across what the world says. The domestic servants, you are slaves of the people who pay your miserable wage, and you have to jump when they want you to jump. Those of you who till the soil, don't think that it's you that is important, it's your muscles that are important. They don't care for anything else. You've got to till the soil. And then he adds that thing, and your perspiration, which is distasteful to them, it's acceptable because it's water that goes into their soil to water their vegetables. So he's very, very harsh. And he's harsh when he talks about the beggars, the streets of Aix still have today. Who are you beggars in the eyes of the world? And the world doesn't want to see you. You're the scum. You're the refuse of society. They want to pretend that you're not there. And he takes all these people who are hurt by society, who are abused by society, and he says, okay, now, that's what the world thinks. Let me show you who you really are. And that's then, he calls them brothers, dear brothers. You know, calling these people brothers is something else, particularly someone from the nobility. First thing. Secondly, when he says to them, realize your value. Look at Jesus on the cross. As he had looked at Jesus on the cross, he gave his blood for you. And then that very, very touching part where he says, look beneath the rags that cover you. Look beneath the externals that people judge you for, and see your immortal soul that has been bought by the price of nothing less than the blood of the Son of God. That, I think, is the power of the Sermon of the Madeleine, to make people realize their dignity. And from then we see the Sermon of the Madeleine being the model for the preaching of the Oblates, of Eugene and of the Oblates and of the Mazanodian family today. It is to go to those people who are abandoned by the structure of the church with that message. You are valuable. It doesn't matter if you are an outcast in India or in northern Sri Lanka. It doesn't matter what society says of you because that's the color of your skin or because this is what you have done. You are valuable because Jesus gave his life for you. And I think it has a lot of repercussions as well in the whole social justice ministry. Because often people say, well, Eugene never spoke about social justice. Well, no one did at that stage. The whole philosophy, the thinking of Marx, for instance, was only being born at that stage. So the bishops of France were interested, continuing the way that things were being done, acts of charity towards those who are the poor. Look after them. But no one had actually got into the thinking of, well, you need to work at the roots. And I think that there you see Eugene beginning to work at the roots. The roots are the roots of human dignity, the roots of looking at yourself as God sees you to be. Jumping a little bit ahead to an oblate in Bolivia called Father Mauricio Lefebvre. He got to Bolivia, which was at that stage the poorest country of South America, with some tremendous social problems, plus a dictatorship that was squashing the people. And his inspiration, what to do, was to go and study sociology. And he did his doctorate in sociology. He came back to Bolivia and he started at the University of La Paz the faculty of sociology, the first time ever. Why? because he wanted to give the people the tools that they could use to cause social change themselves. So it wasn't just people receiving charity, but it was him teaching people, look, you can pull yourself up and you can do something about change. I think to me that's one of the important testaments, one of the important results of the Sermon of the Motherland, to give people the tools which start with their own human dignity. And you can see the life of Eugene, the ministry of Eugene, very much as being that. And I think we also have to add one last thing there. The Sermon on the Motherland, we say the Motherland Sermon, but there were in fact 5 Motherland sermons because it was one for every week of Lent. What was Eugene trying to do? By getting them to realize and understand their dignity saved by Jesus Christ, he wanted them then to enter into relationship with Jesus. And that's what the other sermons were about. Building from this to lead them to the sacraments, and in particular to the sacrament of confession, where there, face to face with the priest, you're celebrating the sacrament and you are encountering Jesus, who is going to forgive you, who is going to give you that strength then to carry on living. So, what is the Sermon on the Motherland? A masterpiece of mission and ministry that we all need to swallow and live ourselves.